the search that never ends. Everyone wants happiness, and yet almost no one finds it. They search in noise, in wealth, in others, in things that shimmer just long enough to fade. They chase, they copy, they believe what they're told, that more will fix it, that success will heal it, that somewhere out there it waits. But happiness doesn't wait, it doesn't move, it doesn't hide, it just isn't found where most people look. They run faster, but further from it, because this isn't a race. It's a return, not out there, but in, not by gain, but by letting go. And until you stop, you'll never see you were never missing anything. Happiness is not what most people think. If happiness were what most people believed, the world would be full of it. But look around, look closely. Chasing pleasure, collecting things, measuring joy by how loud it looks. They smile for the surface, but underneath, it's hollow, restless, tired, not because they're weak, but because they were misled. They were told happiness is a feeling, a reward, a destination, but it's none of those. Happiness isn't loud, it doesn't perform, it doesn't need an audience. It's not in more, it's in enough. It's not in control, it's in clarity. It's not given, it's built. Quietly, internally, slowly. Most people are unhappy not because they failed to reach it, but because they never knew what it actually was. They followed the crowd, and the crowd was wrong. Because happiness doesn't scale. It doesn't trend. It lives in the opposite direction of everything you were taught to chase. The first error, following others. The first mistake is looking sideways. They follow friends, family, the loudest voice, the nearest path, not because it's right, but because it's there. They live by reflection, not direction. Copying routines, mimicking dreams, wearing lives that never fit. But no borrowed path can take you where you belong. Because what works for them wasn't made for you. Seneca saw it clearly. The more you imitate, the more you disappear. And most do. Quietly, willingly. They trade self-knowledge for acceptance. Trade instinct for approval. They drown in the comfort of the crowd and call it life. But comfort is not peace. Noise is not truth, and going with the flow only feels smooth when you're going nowhere. The happy life begins the moment you stop asking, "What are they doing?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" There is no map, there is no herd, there is only this, to step off the path and walk the one you carve alone. The second error, pleasure, happiness. Pleasure feels like freedom, but it isn't. It feels like choice, but it controls you. It gives, then takes, and still, most chase it. Call it joy, call it success, call it living. But Seneca warned, pleasure is the most convincing prison. It silences your doubts just long enough to deepen the trap. It offers escape, not peace. Distraction, not direction. And when it fades, because it always fades, you're left needing more. Not because you're broken, but because pleasure is built to disappear. The truth? Anything that can be taken away is not happiness. If it depends on mood, it isn't stable. If it requires conditions, it isn't free. Real joy doesn't rise and fall. It holds, it doesn't excite, it steadies, and you don't chase it. You become it by choosing virtue over thrill, clarity over stimulation, truth over taste. The happy life isn't the most pleasant, it's the most real. The true foundation, living according to nature. You weren't made for chaos, you weren't built for noise, you were designed to be still. Seneca knew, a happy life doesn't resist nature. It returns to it, not to the forest, but to your form, to your function, to your reason. To live according to nature is not to wander. It's to align with what is real, with what endures, with what is already inside you. Most people fight the world. They chase more, they push against time, they rush past their own limits, and then they wonder why everything feels wrong. But peace is not out there. It's in order, in fitting, in living a life that matches what you are. The soul doesn't want indulgence, it wants integrity, it wants discipline, simplicity, truth. Nature doesn't rush, doesn't shout, doesn't pretend, it just moves, quietly, consistently, perfectly. So must you. Happiness begins when you stop struggling to be something you're not and start being what you were meant to become. A mind that stands still. The world moves fast, but the mind doesn't have to. Noise outside doesn't mean there must be noise within. Seneca taught, a happy life begins when the mind stops chasing, stops reacting, stops gripping, stops spinning in circles around what it can't control. The mind that stands still sees clearly, chooses wisely, acts without panic. It doesn't follow impulse. It doesn't rush toward pleasure or away from pain. It simply remains, unshaken, unmoved, unaffected. This is not detachment, it's dominion, over thought, over reaction, over the inner storm that makes people crumble long before life touches them. A steady mind doesn't fear outcomes. It doesn't cling to praise, it doesn't dread the unknown, because it knows what it is. And in that stillness, happiness arrives. Not loud, not sudden, but deep. Peace is not found in changing the world. It's found in building a mind that the world cannot change. Virtue is its own reward. Most people ask, what do I get if I live well? Seneca never asked that, because he knew virtue needs no prize. It is the prize. To act with integrity, to choose what's right when no one's watching, to hold your line when it costs you comfort. That is the reward. Not applause, not reputation, not outcome, just the quiet knowing that you didn't betray yourself. Because happiness isn't something you chase outside. It's what grows when your inner world stops fracturing, when your actions match your values, when you no longer need to explain who you are. Because you live it. Most seek pleasure, then ask why they feel empty. But virtue doesn't leave you empty. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't rot. It builds you. Silently, day after day, until one day you realize you no longer need happiness as a goal, because you've become a person who no longer depends on it. You have something stronger. You have peace with yourself. True freedom, not owning, not being owned. The more you own, the more owns you. Things that sparkle, things that impress, things that say I've made it. But Seneca knew, nothing you can lose is truly yours. And the more you grip it, the more it grips back. That's not freedom. That's dependence. True freedom is when you can walk away from anything at any time without panic, because you no longer live to protect the pile. You live to protect the core, not the house, the foundation, not the title, the character. This is the test. Can they take it from you and you remain whole? Can you lose status, money, approval, and still stand the same? If the answer is no, then you are not free. You are owned. Freedom isn't escape, it's inner autonomy. To need little, to carry light, to be at peace with nothing in your hands but your own principles. Because the man who has less to defend moves faster, falls softer, fights cleaner. He doesn't serve his possessions, he serves his purpose. And that, no one can steal. The happy life is self-contained. Most people think they'd more people, more noise, more motion, but Seneca saw the opposite. The happy life is whole on its own. It doesn't require approval. It doesn't demand company. It doesn't collapse when left in silence. Because real joy doesn't depend on what enters. It flows from what stays. A mind at peace, a will aligned, a day lived without contradiction. Not loud, not grand, just enough. Enough discipline to do what matters. Enough stillness to hear yourself think. Enough clarity to see through the world's disguise. The one who needs nothing from others stops being their servant. He can walk away, he can wait, he can rest without seeking to be seen. And in that space, he finds something stronger than comfort. He finds sovereignty. Because when your joy no longer needs to be shared, it can no longer be taken. It becomes a quiet flame, unseen, unshaken. Yours, completely. The final silence. You cannot be moved. Nothing out there can shake what is still inside. Not praise, not loss, not time, not fate. Seneca didn't seek invincibility. He built something colder, calmer, an inner posture that couldn't be pulled, bent, rattled. Because the world only moves you if you give it permission. And when you no longer need to please, to chase, to prove, you become dangerously free. People speak, you hear them, but they do not enter. Circumstances shift, you adjust, but you do not break. This is the edge, the end. The place where noise stops, not because it got quiet, but because you did. No scream can reach you, no storm can flood you, because you've seen what you are when everything is stripped away. And you did not fall. This is happiness, not the smile, not the moment, but the state of being untouched. Untouched by fear, by need, by the world. You don't rise above it, you simply remain as you are. Unmoved, unowned enough.